officials have had various ideas, but this one has not been proposed yet. Brussels, armed with the shield of democracy, intends to intervene in the electoral processes of member states. To put it bluntly, it intends to decide who can run for office and on what terms. It intends to introduce its own commission responsible for elections in EU countries, its own experts, and its own rules. The Democracy Shield is a tool with which the European Union wants to intervene in member states, supposedly defending democracy, but in reality creating tools for censorship, eliminating policies and politicians who disagree with Brussels. It is a planned program to influence the judiciary, the services, and the functioning of the internet. Above all, it is about controlling political life by trying to influence election results and public sentiment in such a way that conservative and right-wing parties cannot come to power. The test has already been done. In Romania, the election victory of right-wing presidential candidate Călin Georgescu was invalidated. And French leader Emmanuel Macron blocked conservative frontrunner Marine Le Pen from running. Now Brussels wants to interfere in elections on a larger scale. The point is to ensure that those who bow to Brussels win. This is censorship. This is a restriction of freedom. The European Commission may even dream of determining election results with obedient left-wing or liberal politicians. This cannot be allowed. And all this, of course, under the enlightened slogans of fighting disinformation, Russian propaganda, and online hate speech, in order to justify interference that is not enshrined in any EU treaties. Because nowhere is there any mention of an electoral super commission appointed by Brussels, and there are even plans to introduce an EU digital system to manage elections. The world described in Orwell's book 1984 has so far been only a terrifying dystopia, a fictional world of totalitarian absurdity. But Brussels is creating a real ministry of truth, drawing heavily on Orwell. The Democracy Shield is a tool of total censorship, dressed up in beautiful ideas. The Brussels elites have seen the approaching end of their rule and are therefore playing va-banque. Brussels justifies its unauthorized interference in the electoral process in member states by citing alleged threats to democracy and voters' rights.
My job is to protect the rights of people and make sure that our EU democracies stay strong.
The truth is, however, that the Brussels Shield is not meant to protect democracy, but the left liberal elites. The Brussels-Berlin elites have never given up and do not seem likely to give up on the process of deeper integration, as they call it, which is actually an attempt to federalize the European Union, limit the sovereignty of member states, and all such measures. So let's be vigilant and not allow ourselves to be muzzled. And let's not be fooled by fine words that are meant to cover up nefarious intentions. Democracy itself is at stake. An Indian Tejas multi-role fighter jet belonging to the Indian Air Force crashed during the Dubai Air Show in the United Arab Emirates. The pilot was killed in the crash. No one on the ground was injured. Footage from the air show shows black smoke rising above the runway. The Dubai government has released photos of firefighters extinguishing the still smoldering wreckage. According to witnesses, the fighter jet was flying too low just before the crash.
Saw was it came out. It was performing a negative G maneuver, and the way he recovered, to be honest, and he was already pretty low at that point. So. And then he recovered and he went straight into the ground.
Witnesses said that immediately after the accident, a huge fireball appeared, followed by complete silence. This was the second crash of a fighter jet built by the state-owned company Hindustan Aeronautics. The first occurred during exercises in India in 2024.
The feeling is it's a really terrible feeling because you know, it's experienced pilots. It's long as pilots, flying 20 years. And you know, it's a family on the back. It's only one pilot. This is I'm feeling bad. Not the aircraft himself, only the pilot human.
The domestically produced aircraft, whose name in Sanskrit means brilliance, is considered key to the modernization of the Indian Air Force, which consists mainly of Russian-made or older Soviet-made fighter jets. The crash occurred on the last day of the air show, the largest aviation event in the Middle East. Air Show Dubai is the third largest air show in the world after Paris and Farnborough in the UK. These could be crucial days for Ukraine's future. The Americans are still seeking peace and negotiating with Kiev and Moscow on the terms for ending the bloody fighting. The U.S. media has published 28 points that are supposed to be a peace plan, but as it turns out, they are still under discussion. Poland is also mentioned. The 28 points have caused a great deal of emotions. The American website Axios, which published them, called them the American Peace Plan for Ukraine, sparking a flood of accusations and speculation.
So they have been engaged with both sides, and these talks are continuing. As always, I'm not going to litigate the details of this plan as it's ongoing and it's in flux.
The fact that this is not a finished plan, but rather a working draft that is being developed, is indicated by Ukraine's response. Ukrainian President Zelensky met with a high-level U.S. delegation in Kiev yesterday, and today he stated clearly, "This is one of the most difficult moments in our history. The pressure on Ukraine is now one of the heaviest. Ukraine may now face a very difficult choice, either the loss of dignity or the risk of losing a key partner. Either 28 difficult points or an extremely difficult winter, the most difficult, and additional risks." Information published by the Axios portal would indicate, on the one hand, a guarantee of security and enormous economic support for Ukraine, including money from frozen Russian assets, and on the other hand, major concessions by Ukraine, including territorial concessions and renouncing NATO membership. This is a very disturbing issue, but realistically speaking, the only chance for Ukraine to regain these territories would involve a massive operation carried out by Ukraine, comparable to those in the first or second phase of the war, and the Ukrainian army cannot afford this at the moment. From Poland's perspective, the statement about the deployment of European fighter bases in our country is noteworthy. This has sparked numerous comments and voices of outrage, including from Polish Prime Minister Tusk, but nothing is known about this subject except for this enigmatic statement in a publication on one website concerning an unofficial draft document. The problem with interpreting such leaks, which seem to be confirmed at the moment, is that we are faced with a choice. Should we comment on the media hysteria that always erupts when Trump or members of his administration make gestures towards Putin, or should we comment on the reality of these proposals and how realistic it is that they could end this war? What is a fact, however, are Donald Trump's recent words and clear declaration during Polish President Karol Nawrocki's first official visit to Washington, D.C., about strengthening the American presence in Poland.
I think so. I mean, do you know something I don't? I don't know. Yeah, we're very happy. If anything, we'll put more there if they want. But they've long wanted to have a larger presence. We have some countries that have more, not too many, but no, they'll be staying in Poland.
There is indeed a continuation of the idea, which is present not only in President Trump's statements during President Nawrocki's visit to Washington, that even the forces in Poland may be increased rather than reduced, but there is also a statement that European fighter jets will be moved to Poland, and the idea that American bases will be moved from Germany to Poland is constantly being raised in circles close to American diplomacy, with whom I sometimes talk. Although the European Union's position on this issue has little impact on reality, the head of EU diplomacy, Estonian Kaja Kallas, when asked about U.S. attempts to end the conflict, unequivocally supported them.
We are supportive of any plan that brings about just and lasting peace. As for the peace plan we understand that President Zelensky has been presented with, we have always said that any peace plan to work It has to be with Ukraine and with the Europeans on board.
Despite enormous efforts on the front lines, Ukraine is weakening, with the lack of soldiers being the main problem. Recently, Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko even called for a reduction in the draft age, but this was met with criticism from the government. Ukraine's situation is not helped by the recent corruption scandal, which has also affected Ukrainian President Zelensky.